things going to be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, I have a lot of videos up about how to write the bibliography and stuff. Have you saw those? Are those helpful?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, I will be on SS Connect from 2 to 5 today. So in case any of you guys want to talk to me after class, I'll be on there. Okay. For the rest of you, how's the audio book going? I haven't gotten to record my parts yet. I've been very busy the past few days. But how's everything going for you all?
Good for me, but I have a question about that.
Okay.
Like Quincy's part, he doesn't have like a diary. He just like he's in a couple different chapters, just showed up as like a, you know, how he was introduced as a character. He doesn't have like a diary, and I didn't know if or it might not be in the PDF that I'm reading because I couldn't find anything about it. But he's mentioned in chapters, and I didn't know if he wanted me to.
See that's definitely a problem. I'm glad you asked about this. Natasha, how about you and Shaylee split up the Dr. Seward parts? Because there's so many Dr. Seward parts.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. There's so many of them.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is it too late to do the audiobook?
At this point, I'm sorry, Addison, but it is because
That's okay.
Yeah, we've already filled all the parts.
Okay.
Shaylee, how's that sound? Does that sound agreeable to you? You can take half the Dr. Seward parts and.
Yeah, that's fine. If you want, she can like send me like whatever parts I could do, or since it looks like you already had them already labeled and stuff. So
I have the chapters marked in here for his parts. There is one. Let me find that real quick that I just wanted clarification. It's in chapter, I think it's 24, not 14. It says Dr. Seward's a phonograph diary spoken by Van Helsing. That's technically a Van Helsing read, right? Even though it's entered through Dr. Seward's method of the book.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So Bella, that's information for you with it right there. Make sure in chapter 14 you read that part.
24.
24. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Shaylee, are you in the group messenger on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I after today's Zoom meeting, I will contact you and we can work that out. I'm kind of just thinking maybe divide it in half, the first half versus the last half, just to make it very simple.
But, yeah, that works for me. Okay. Anything to make it easier.
Yeah, that helps with the workload too, Hannah, or Natasha, because you had a ton. So that helps even the workload out more. So I think that works out great.
Yes, I do agree. And I'm fine with doing the reading. I did start to read out loud, and I've been having sinus issues, so I started having my asthma kick up, and so that does help a little bit. So where is that?
Yeah, because I was reading, there's a ton of parts for him, and my Quincy, I was like, I didn't know, because it was just like he was just mentioned, so I was like, I didn't know how that would work. And like the other little tiny parts are like little paragraphs, so that would not seem fair for you to do that whole thing by yourself. So definitely whatever can make it easier.
Yeah, okay.
How are the rest of you guys doing? Laura, are you doing okay with it? She's on the phone. I'll get back to her. Hannah, how about you? I know you're at the beach, but
honestly, I haven't started on it yet. But when I get back Saturday, I'm going to.
Yeah, we should probably start seeing some progress in it soon. Just because we only got one more week of school left after this. So maybe by next Wednesday, most of it should be done, guys. Most of it should be done by next Wednesday. So don't procrastinate.
The paper's due Saturday, right, for me?
Yes, the final paper, not the bibliography, but the final paper next week will be due on Saturday. That's right.
Okay, and when was the bibliography due?
This Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. And are you having any trouble finding sources or anything like that, Addison?
No. So you said the bibliography this Saturday and then the paper next Saturday?
That's correct. Yeah, and I'm gonna
So
get.
can I? Oh, sorry. Can I start on that on those videos Saturday, or do you want me to start on it before?
Well, I'm saying mostly have everything done by next Wednesday. So enjoy your vacation. And
Okay, I will start on it literally as soon as I get back. I brought my book and computer though, so I mean, if you need me to, it's no problem.
yeah, like I said, I'm guilty as charged myself because I haven't started my part yet. So yes.
Yeah, I haven't filmed anything either. I've just been rereading it so that I'm familiar with it when I do go to speak it out.
Good. That's very wise, Laura. Make sure that if there's any words there that might trip you up, you'll be aware of them. Okay, so everybody seems to be on track then. So wonderful.
So I had a question about the Dracula discussions. Do we need to partake in the discussions as well?
You do not, since you are on this.
Okay.
Yes. I think you were here last week too, Laura. So yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. And Addison's here this week, so she doesn't have to do the one for this week either. So. Yeah, I did. Did I post final questions for that? I've been so busy this week that my head's spinning. Let's see. I think I did. Yes, I do have end of novel discussion questions up, but none of you have to worry about that. All
Don't worry
right.
about the novel discussion questions.
Yes, since you're on Zoom, Addison, you don't have to do the end of the novel discussion question. Yes. I think you need to do, if you haven't already, you'll have to do the part 1 discussion question from last week. But you're good this week. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our discussion then. I'm not going to hold you guys too long today. I figure if we can have a good, most of the discussion of the novel was last week when we covered almost probably 65% of the novel last week. So this week we going to put a bow in it as far as that goes. Well, I guess to start.
Has anyone else watched the miniseries?
Oh yeah, did any of you guys watch that?
I'm on the 2nd episode right now.
What do
We're
you?
talking about the Netflix Dracula one, right?
Yes.
That was actually what I thought was the but yes, I watched that a long time ago.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've been busy because I work part-time. So I probably will soon.
Yeah.
What do you think of it so far? We're after
It's
one
interesting.
episode.
I mean, there's a lot of differences that I've noticed, but you'll have that between books and movies or series. So, but besides that, I found it very interesting, and then it gave me some like inspiration for Minna, if that makes sense, because that's who I'm playing.
Oh, buddy, let me tell you this. I was on call with some of my friends last night reading Dracula. They were asking me, and I was like, what are you reading? I was like, Dracula. I was telling them about it. They're like, that book sounds awesome. And like, I was like, I'm so proud.
Now, what is this series on? Is it on Netflix?
Yes. Yeah, it's very good. Like Alora said, it changes a lot of the plot. It does it in interesting ways. It really bends things in an interesting, almost modern spin.
And I feel like it's told more from Dracula's side, where the book is told more, where you're reading their diaries, it's told from their side.
Yeah, the second episode is all on the boat when Dracula is going to London. It's like that's a part of the book sort of skims over, but the whole second episode's on the boat, which is fun. Van Helsing is a lady on the show, which is interesting. Gender bending. She's awesome on there. She's a great character. Dracula was really good too. I remember after I watched it the first time, Laura, I remember at the end of the first episode, I was like, I don't know about this guy's Dracula, but the second episode he sold it for me. Like, the second episode is really good. So, I don't know if you were thinking the same thing. But,
Oh yeah, definitely when you first seen him, because it's not what I pictured from reading the book. But then he became that character that you imagine and pictured,
yeah. If you guys ever watched Sherlock, the Sherlock show, Benedict Cumberbatch, it's the same writer as the Sherlock show, so they put a modern spin on everything. Yeah, very good. I would definitely recommend that, as well as the '92 film that Natasha mentioned last week. It's also real fun to go back and watch some of the older Draculas, like the 1932 or 31 version with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one's interesting. It's hard because it's just so out of date.
Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. They changed a lot of the plot and stuff in the 1931 movie, and that's why so many Draculas afterward weren't very true to the book. But his depiction's iconic. I'll pull up a picture of him as Dracula just in case you guys will all recognize it when I pull the picture up. Here he is as Dracula. You guys all probably all recognize this depiction of him. You've probably seen it on like Count Chocula cereal boxes and things like that, right? He's got the nice cape, the cool cape and the bow tie, right? It looks pretty scary.
Yes, I remember when I was younger, him being on the cereal boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Count Chocula is some good stuff. You got to stock up in October for the year ahead, right? Frankenberries are pretty good too, right? There's also a good 1959 version called Horror of Dracula. I think that's what it's called. Let me double check that title. Yeah, Horror of Dracula from 1958. And it stars Christopher Lee as Dracula. If you guys have ever watched Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, Christopher Lee was the evil wizard in Lord of the Rings, Saruman. And he was Count Dooku in the Star Wars movies. But he is a great Dracula too. If you have HBO Max, you can actually watch that version on there. So if you want to see, that one's fairly close to the book, as close as any version was until the '92 version. Yeah, there's plenty of film adaptations. Dracula has way better films than Frankenstein does. I don't think Frankenstein has ever really had a movie that's satisfactory with the book.
I watched the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I watched all about maybe 5-10 minutes of it And I got so frustrated with it because it just right off the bat starts completely off plot line.
Same thing.
Yeah, I
And-
couldn't.
That's not how it was. That's not it. That's not right. And then I could not, because it was outdated. It's hard for me to watch the older movies, and then it wasn't right. So I was like, I can't do it.
Right. I did like that the actors and actresses that are in it are fabulous in other movies, but yeah, I just got so hung up on it. I'm one of those people that if it's so far off the plot line, that's all I can focus on, and I'll scream at the TV, that didn't happen. That's not how it is.
Yeah, if I remember right, spoiler alert, if I remember right, at the end of that film, like Victor keeps the female monster alive because he wants to have relations with her. Right? That's how I remember the end of that film going. So.
Well, glad I didn't decide to watch that.
Yeah.
If that's how that plot line is ended, I'll have to watch it just because of my theory of how Frankenstein the plot came to be from Mary Shelley, based on her relationship with her father.
And I'm just over here like, bro, I just want him and Clearbowl to get together. That's all I want. Please. Like, buddy, those two had something. You cannot tell me any different.
We need a modernized version since we live in the year 2022. Though.
Yeah, something modernized and more gay.
I've never been a big reader like in anything. I've never like been able to like actually get through a whole book, and I actually enjoyed the Frankenstein book.
Yeah, Frankenstein's one that's always popular with students.
Yeah, I read it in high school and I liked it.
I'm gonna be honest, it was too mingy for me. I wish you would have picked Hill House and Dracula together. I could. It's just the minginess, man.
Yeah, if you guys would have put this class in the fall, you'd have got the whole experience. But the 5-week course, too much. Well, let's navigate to the finishing our discussion of the novel. If you remember last week in our discussion, we discussed several themes. I kind of tried to organize it around themes last week. So we had, of course, the almost religious themes of like the vampires drinking blood and how that has religious connotations, especially with older forms of Christianity like Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, right? We talked a lot about that last week. We talked a lot about the sort of exotic themes of the book. So like the Eastern Europeans are painted as being simpletons and things like that. We definitely get a lot more of that here in the second half, especially as they move back towards Transylvania. We also talked about gender roles, and we'll definitely need to have a conversation about that this week with how the book treats Mina in the second half. We mostly talked about Lucy last week, so we definitely get a whole lot more Mina in the second half as far as that's concerned. But mostly the second half here, I think you guys found it's less exposition and more action. Like the second half's definitely full of more action as they're trying to hunt Dracula and eventually chase him all the way back to Castle Dracula. That's where they finish him off. So there's the threads I want to discuss today. I don't know if any of you guys want to take us in a certain direction first. Maybe I'll ask general opinions first. How did you guys feel about how Dracula ended? Did you find it satisfactory? Were some threads not touched upon that could have been?
I thought the ending was kind of like abrupt in a way. Like I get like the whole here you go, this led up to Dracula being killed off, and I'm over here like, well, Can I have like an aftermath, please? Like, I want to know like an aftermath about how Dracula has affected other people. Like, say, like Mina, I mean, like not exactly Mina, but like, say for example, someone else got bitten and we didn't know about it. Like, what would happen to them? What happened to Reinfeld? What happened to, everybody else after? Like, I would have been fine with it if they gave us like a more detailed epilogue.
Yeah, we found out Renfield's neck was broke, right? Dracula broke his neck and killed him.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying about everything else there, Bella. It ends with them stabbing a stake through his heart, pretty much.
I'm just like, yeah, but like, what happened to y'all after?
I think that was maybe done purposely just to end the terror of Dracula, to, for them to get back on their life, to move on away from the evilness. Or it could have been done for your imagination purposes, like like the mention of Dracula's guest. Maybe that's a sequel that does have more of the aftermath stories. I don't know, I haven't gotten that far to read that, but I like that it was such a clean ending. And normally I'm the same way about wanting to know what happened to the main characters. Did they live happily ever after? Was there any recourse? But I liked it. It left the door open for possibilities.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But if it would have went into detail with what happened to them afterwards, it's like there was nothing left to the imagination. I like the cliffhanger in a sense.
Yeah, I agree too, because it did leave you wondering like what happened. I feel like there needs to be a Dracula too.
His Bram Stoker's great grandson, I think, wrote a unofficial sequel that was just published a few years ago. It's called Dracula without the A at the end. That's what it's called. I haven't read it yet, but I figured since he's family, right, he figured he could do it.
Yeah, that would be interesting, especially where he is family. It's like he's continuing the legacy.
Or it could be complete trash.
Yeah.
True.
Such a high standard.
And plus, like, just because you're related to a writer doesn't mean that you can possibly write.
Yeah, I can't speak to it. I have it on my bookshelf. I can't speak to it yet. I haven't read it.
I mean, but you never know. Maybe she wrote diaries just like they did, and he's got those to go by. I mean,
yeah, maybe, but maybe it might be actually really authentic, like seeming.
I'm sorry to bring us back to the ending, but I think the ending was good, but also it kind of set up for media. And what I mean by that, like how everybody's like, what I haven't read Dracula before until this class. So it was like, oh, how you kill a vampire with like garlic and like you just chop their head off. And that kind of set it up. Like they kind of knew that it was going to be like brought into media and different ways to kill a vampire with like holy water and this and that. It's just crazy how like the ending of that book is so different from media now too, if that makes sense.
I get what you mean.
Are you especially talking about like romantic vampires and stuff like that, Shaylee?
Yeah, like even in different stories, like there's like the cartoon movie, like I have nephews, like Hotel Transylvania. They're like, oh no, can't get around garlic because this and that, you know. But it's just like it's crazy how the book doesn't even like mention that. It's just weird how the media does.
And also, like, I noticed that like nowadays vampires are really romanticized. Really, really romanticized.
Yes.
For example, Hotel Transylvania, Dracula's actually a nice dude. Vampire Diaries, vampires are very different.
Yes, I agree. I literally agree on that.
Like, it's just really romanticized and different from like how Stoker actually wrote Dracula to be. Like, that part like where Mina got bit, there was a little footnote I noticed. Let me find it. It was like, I swear I put it down.
See, I feel like that's where nowadays they're trying to humanize them and give them like a soul. Where in Dracula, he didn't have any
Yeah,
soul care for anything.
I can't exactly find the footnote, but I think I can remember it. Okay, there was the part like where Mina was getting bit, and like it said something like during like for movies like when they made that scene, they didn't put it more as like a seduction type of scene, but actually like in the book, Stoker said it's more akin to like rape in a way.
Yes.
And like I noticed that, I was like, that is odd.
Yeah, this is you're taking us down a direction here, Bill, that I wanted to go in anyway. That is how the novel treats Nina in the second half.
I felt so bad for her.
Yes.
Yeah, if you, of course, you're exactly right. She was pretty much raped, right?
Yeah, because like I don't think she like consented to doing that. There was like literally zero consent there, dog.
Was you gonna say Addison before I spoke up?
I know. I was just saying I feel terrible about how she was felt in the second half there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also one thing I noticed that like the guys took a lot more action this time. Like Mina wanted to help. She was begging to like help. But there's like, nope, you got bit, you ain't doing it.
They actually, my understanding with the second part of the book that we read was that once Mina had done the womanly part of putting together all the men's work and organizing everything so that they can see exactly what happened, her part was now to stay home and stay safe and let the men do their work. And then that had dire consequences. How they did not foreshadow that or even see it after the first symptom of her character literally becoming lethargic and zombie-like, just like Lucy in the first half, was pretty astounding, and just kind of spoke to how back in the day men tended to undermine women and think them less than, especially in that regards to action and men work and scholarly development.
Yeah, all I can say is that Bram Stoker is now a feminist.
Yes, I think that's pretty safe to say. Yeah, the novel's sort of like it's pretty well implied she didn't consent, right? But the novel pretty much almost sort of the best way to put it is slut shames her. Right? That's like she's painted as almost like Lucy was when Lucy was a vampire, sort of this overly like she's painted as innocent and virginal and all that stuff, but at the same time she's now stained. She's now corrupted. That innocence is corrupted. So,
Yeah, because I noticed that part when they was talking about the wafer, and she now has a scar on her forehead because the fact that she can't even touch anything holy anymore. And she was crying to Jonathan like, my God that I love doesn't accept me anymore.
right?
Yep.
Van Helsing Van Helsing even describes her as this almost sort of corrupted, this is sort of corrupted innocence following the part where Dracula turns her.
I thought it was like kind of funny how all the men were just like protecting Mina the whole entire time. Like she had all them men, you know what I mean? They were protecting her so good from Dracula. And I found that interesting in the book.
Yeah, it almost becomes sort of like a holy grail quest, right? To kill Dracula, and then she's just there
Yeah,
right for the
they
picking.
were for sure on a mission.
Yeah, all of them had all of them had one mission only. Also, I was reading through Van Helsing's parts. Like, you should see the way he talks about Mina. I'm like, buddy, do you have feelings for her or what? Because I'm like, she married, man. Because he's like, oh, my dear Mina. And I'm like, honey, her husband's right there. Like, am I the only one who kind of noticed that?
I think Van Helsing's role in this is more like maybe a fatherly, grandfatherly manner. Maybe not sexual attraction, but just care.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm with you on that, but I feel like he's also trying to convince Dr. Seward in the first part that it is a vampire. Nobody will believe him.
He knows that if he was to come out and say that even his dear friend John, who he studied, taught essentially and brought up, mentored, would deem him a lunatic. And so he had to set the clues and let them see the proof, the hardcore proof, because anything back then that wasn't of science or religion was just not right.
And also, one thing I wondered, now that I think about it, Van Helsing previously knew like what vampires were, and he actually had a situation with a vampire once or something. Because I was thinking, how does he know that? Maybe he heard about it somewhere, or he studied on it or something, or my hypothetical idea is that maybe he had an encounter with someone kind of like Dracula once, and then he started to try to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, I think that was kind of. I'm trying to remember the passage, but I think they do touch on that somewhere in the middle of the book, that he kind of refers to previous dealings that I could have misunderstood.
Maybe. I'm trying to remember. I'm not really good at remembering finer details sometimes.
Yeah, in the film version, they make it like a reincarnation angle, right? Where Van Helsing was the priest in the previous life. That was a cool way to do it, I thought.
Oh yeah. The reincarnation where Dracula has just been alive this whole time. This priest has been around technically the same, but through different lifespans.
Yeah, this part where Mina is transformed it's definitely pretty intense. Like, she isn't just bit. Right? We find out here that in order to turn someone into a vampire, he has to feed her his blood too, which is as we discussed last week, that has some severe, especially religious overtones, because said whenever you take the Eucharist, right, that's supposed to be the body and blood of Christ. So this is almost like a inversion of the Holy Eucharist that many older, even Anglicans even think the Eucharist is the real presence, right? So you can kind of see how this is almost like a demonic inversion of the Eucharist.
Something I could use help on, these boxes of dirt. Maybe I just don't remember or reading it, or just didn't understand the purposes of the dirt. Can he not survive without his homeland dirt? Essentially, is that what that whole is?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was kind of confused about the boxes.
Yeah, that's That's exactly it, Natasha. He can't survive without being on the dirt of his homeland.
Okay.
Hmm.
So essentially, what Van Helsing and Dr. Seward explain as experiments, this is literally him invading to see if he can start a new populace, essentially.
Yeah, this is where we get into the exotic themes, right? Because here is an outsider from Eastern Europe who London or people in England especially didn't trust. There's a lot of xenophobia towards Eastern Europeans. Even in America, there's always been a lot of xenophobia towards Eastern Europeans. But here's an Eastern European guy who seems overly sexualized, who's corrupting these young, innocent, virginal girls, right? He's coming in and he's trying to take over the prize of civilization, right? London. You can kind of see how that's working, right? The evil outsider is crossing the borders and trying to corrupt the civilized English people.
The good people. Yeah.
Right. This was pretty common in the Victorian times. There's another, what's the name of that other book? The Beetle, I think it's called The Beetle.
The Beetle.
Yeah.
Who writes that?
Richard the Beetle, an 1897 novel by a writer called Richard Marsh. It actually sold more than Dracula, but it sort of faded off into obscurity for a long time after it was initially really popular. But it's another novel where an outsider comes from another culture, comes in and corrupts the great noble English people. So yeah, that is definitely a key theme here. The outsider coming in. All that stuff at the beginning of the book where Jonathan describes how simple the Eastern Europeans are and how superstitious they are and all that, right? You can definitely see a lot of that.
Yeah, it's just reading through and just thinking in a different manner. It's kind of like Bram Stoker. His whole purpose, his horror plot wasn't just to write a monster, but to scare people with invaders from a foreign land, to show them as truly monsters.
Exactly. It's not the
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I never thought about that, but that makes perfect sense now.
No, it's pretty easy for us to wrap our minds around, right? Because there's still a lot of xenophobia in our culture today. Like there's always lots of worry about thinking about the Mexican border, for instance, right? There's always lots of worry of, well, what if all these illegals get over, right? They're going to rape and pillage everyone down south, right? Okay. Maybe you guys can kind of see how there's lots of worry about that kind of thing. Sometimes maybe rightfully so, especially with like drug cartels and stuff. But that these attitudes still exist today. I think it's kind of hard to argue that they don't.
Oh, yeah, they definitely do. It's fearing the unknown, personal safety and not knowing what that other culture is based on. What's their cultural upbringing? What's their virtuous teachings to their youngers?
All this stuff definitely existed in the 1890s, both in London and in America. for a long time in America, in the later part of the 1800s, there was even a political party called the Know Nothing Party. The Know Nothing Party's platform was Catholics are bad, Eastern Europeans are bad, Jews are bad. Like, that was pretty much their whole platform. So Americans are definitely guilty, both then and now. So, like I said, I'm a pretty moderate college professor about college professor standards, right? But it's hard to argue that this isn't a thing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely hard to argue. We definitely sit in on a debate to argue that.
And I think a big problem too is like how now, well, even back then, like cultural diversity, like it's hard to be exposed when it's all just the same people all the time. And I feel like if we were more exposed and like that that portion, it wouldn't be as bad, maybe, or it might be worse. I don't know. Who knows at that point? And it's like definitely a hard thing to talk about because you don't want to, it's kind of on the fence about stuff. But I feel like just being exposed to different cultures and stuff, it would have maybe helped, but it could also have opposite effects too. So
Yeah, in our area, right, that's something that we don't get a lot of. Like, there's not a lot of cultural diversity in this area, which is truly a shame.
yeah, definitely around here. We like I did a study in sociology, how it's just like it's hard, like it's set, like kind of set up in our minds where we're not around all different types of people, but once you are, you have to get used, and it's like a cultural shock type of situation and just overwhelmed. But I feel like easing into culture slowly, but it's hard to get right where we are.
Yeah, even here in southern West Virginia, right, even below the Charleston area, right, we have a very insular culture. So we're like, oh, southern West Virginia, right? We're different even than the northern West Virginians, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, my children, because we're from Washington State, we're raised on the West Coast, and that has a lot of cultural diversity there.
Right.
For them moving here, it was a bit of a shock. Some of the things that they hear and see. So yeah.
how did you end up in Washington here, Natasha? I don't know if you ever told
Yeah.
us that story.
I touched on it a little in the introduction, but essentially Washington State is just way too liberal. It's going to the negative aspect of things.
Right.
But that's a political discussion for some other time. So I've lived in California, and that was even worse. So I decided we wanted to buy property. So we just got on Zillow.com and entered price and property parameters and looked at a few different states. And honestly, it was just more of a spiritual realization that West Virginia was the right place. And I have not had a moment of, oh, I made a mistake, if anything. Especially, I live in such a little town. I live in Lake, right outside of Chapmanville, and the community here it's been amazing. It's, even though it's so small and they haven't had much cultural diversity, there's more cultural diversity with just the few neighbors around me than some of the interactions I've had with the people in Chapmanville itself. So, but that's pretty much kind of like throwing a dart at a map. I just hit enter.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
My supervisor at Southern, who's the Dean of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Mike Giles, He is from California originally, and I think he moved for many of the same reasons.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I love it in West Virginia. A little, my husband says it develops at a slower pace because it's a slower lifestyle, and I very much appreciate that to certain points. But yeah.
saw you unmute Addison.
Yeah, my brother, he is in Morgantown going to WVU, and he says that it's like super different there where he is. He's been there for the last year, and everything is like so fast paced compared to what it is back home.
Oh yeah, that's where I got my doctorate at, is WVU.
Yeah, he just got accepted into the occupational therapy program.
Yeah, they've got students from all over the world there. There's lots of students in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
There's lots of students from Japan, China, Africa.
A lot of friends are like from New Jersey and places.
Yeah, I think there's more New Jersey students go to WVU than West Virginia students, actually. Rutgers is pretty much the big state school in Jersey, and WVU's cheaper to go to out of state than Rutgers is in state. So.
He had the Promise Scholarship and a bunch of other scholarships, so that's where he chose to go, was there. So he's pretty much, everything is paid for.
Can't beat that.
No.
Yeah, we have discussed Mina and sort of the stain on her name that's come over her in this part. Van Helsing even described feels like this repulsion towards her at one point, right? So we've discussed that. We've discussed exotic themes. One thing we haven't gotten to discuss much so far in the book is Renfield. Renfield's plot line came to a close today. He's pretty much the reason why Mina gets bit, right? Because he allowed the rule, you got to invite a vampire in, right? Well, Renfield is an inmate at the asylum, so he has dibs to let him in. So that's how Dracula even gets in the first place.
I got to close your loopholes, man. Close them.
But Renfield's a really interesting character, and we haven't really dived into him yet. What did you guys think of this character throughout the whole book? He's definitely Dr. Seward's preoccupation the whole time. There's lots of pages spent on Renfield.
There's no backstory as to his connection, because when he first is introduced, you can see the undertones of how he would be a servant of Dracula, but there's no connection unless Dracula had made some escapade years earlier, and touched on Renfield, or Renfield went to Dracula. So that is kind of really frustrating. He is definitely a sane lunatic, which I don't think he really should be classified as a lunatic if he's a servant of Dracula. All his spider eating and his rants and raves are all because of Dracula.
Yeah. I thought he was really odd. Kind of funny in a way, I guess, to me. I got like, you funny. But although the spider eating and stuff, that kind of got to me a little bit. Especially whenever he was asking for a cat. Especially the part where he was asking for a cat.
Yeah.
He kept wanting to up it on the eating life scale, right?
Higher life forms, more nutrients to life, lasting life. Because flies only live for so long, spiders only live for so long, cats live longer.
You can kind of do a slippery slope and see how far that would eventually go if it was allowed, right?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he did try to get Dr. Seward's life force. So he was prepared to go all the way. But did he ever do the exchange, the blood exchange from Dracula? Or was this just his own idea? See so many holes.
I would guess it was his own idea. Like he was introduced to Dracula in some way, but he kind of reached his own lots of conclusions through his own sort of mad brain, right? Was you going to say something, Bella?
No,
I saw you unmute. That's why I asked.
I must have accidentally tapped it.
What the rest of you guys, Shaylee, Hannah, what the rest of you guys, Addison, what the rest of you guys think about Renfield's ending?
At first, I thought Renfield was kind of like a pointless character. Can you hear me? Because if not, I can go upstairs.
Yes, I can.
Okay. At first, I thought Renfield's character was kind of pointless because I didn't understand like who he was, and then it kind of ties in at the end because he's like talking about master and stuff like that. He's eating spotters and stuff, so it kind of ties in towards the end. But at first, I was kind of really, honestly, thrown off by Renfield because he's such a random character turning into all these diary entries. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, at the end, he ties into everything with Dracula.
I feel the same way. Like it all kind of just comes together at a point, if that makes sense. Like how, like it just, and when you first read it, all the diary entries, it's kind of hard to keep up with what, and then at the end, it all just kind of perfectly goes together. And I feel like it just tied it really well with his part and things like that.
It kind of puts me in mind of Frankenstein in a way because how they started out with like the entries of the captain and stuff, and then at the end it all ties in together. It kind of seems that way. But if they would make another book, Dracula, without the diary entries, I would probably read it better.
Yeah, those were hard, like to grab it, like concept until the end, and then I do feel like in both books it does tie together. Like more in Frankenstein, like it was easier than the Dracula was.
Yeah, Frankenstein is some more of a traditional flashback novel. Like we're here, flashback. Let's work our way back up. Right. Dracula, you definitely get the pieces. It all comes together 2/3 of the way through the book. Yeah, one thing that's interesting to talk about with Renfield and Dr. Seward is the asylum, the Victorian asylum. Which have any of you guys ever been to the one that we have here in Weston?
I live by it.
Do you?
You're talking about Trans Allegheny?
Yes.
I've always wanted to go. I've never been, but I've always wanted to go.
Yes, you can like stay all night and stuff, and they will like tell you backstories on like the patients, and it's actually really interesting. You really should do it.
I probably will eventually, whenever I actually get a car and some time.
Yeah, you can knock in fall. You can go for ghost tours and things like that. It's a unique place to visit. But that place gives a good example as far as what living conditions were like for the mentally ill in especially the Victorian times. They were kind of thrown into these asylums, and the way there's lots of good books about Victorian mental asylums. One of the great critical theorists, his name is Mikhail Foucault. He wrote a book called, I think it was called The Art of Madness. But yeah, they lived in horrible conditions. The way that people thought about mental illness was different back then. Oftentimes they thought of mental illness as some sort of almost demonic influence, or perhaps some sort of stain in a person's virtue that caused them to be that way. So they didn't really think of it as a disease in the brain so much as something moral that was wrong with people. But they would, let me see if I can pull an image up. It's easier to show than let me tell here. Oftentimes mental asylums were designed in this way. See this picture here? If you look at this picture here, I'll zoom in. This picture is called a panopticon. And this was a way, so all these like little windows or a sort of cage for the person in the asylum. This was a way that someone could sort of sit in a centralized hub, sort of observe all these different patients and what they would do. So they didn't have any privacy. It was all, there's always sort of a constant state of surveillance. Yeah, they're always being watched, the patients. If you guys have ever been in like a retail store where like you can see what the customer is doing behind the wall, like if you've ever worked in a retail store, you can kind of see through the wall what the customer's doing to stop shoplifting and stuff. It's the same principle. Always being monitored. So a little bit creepy, right? A little disturbing.
Yes, very much disturbing.
And so the novel does a good job showing you like what the conditions of asylum were like and how even experimental mental health was as they were trying to figure it out. We've come a long way. Like,
Oh yeah.
Still not perfect, right? But we've come a long way.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to like when you research it, like the different types of therapies they used and what was mental illness, what wasn't, and now what's now accepted and what's not, you know. It's just crazy how times have changed. For the better, at least. Now they don't do all the crazy experiments and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to tour the one in Weston, they actually give you a certificate saying this is why you're admitted. Like they put the name of you there, and then they give you a reason why you were admitted. I think mine was gastric problems or something. Like I had diarrhea all the time, right? So that was because of my mental state. So I was admitted to the asylum for that reason. They give you all kinds of funny ones if you go, but they were actually real reasons why people were admitted. If you were a child who was born with any type of disability, you were thrown into one of these places, usually back then.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to go and check it out. I've never been there, but I've heard about it. I didn't know that they give you like things like that. That seems really cool.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't know that either.
What's that, Hannah? What did you know?
Hold on. I know. Let me move up here. I feel like you can't hear me because of the wind.
Yeah, you guys can kind of the mental asylums were designed with this Gothic architecture too. So like they're always very fitting subjects for the Gothic genre. I'm sure some of you guys in here have watched the American Horror Story TV show. The second season of it was in an asylum.
Yes.
So it's
Yes, sorry.
I was going to say that's one of the better seasons of the show, in my opinion.
Yes, that's my favorite one. I love that one and Freak Show and Cult. I think it was Cult. Those are like the top three of my favorites. I love that show. I'm so excited for the American Horror Story stories to come out for tomorrow. It's like a show with just the stories. It's not really a series like how they do it in American Horror Story. But it's pretty good.
You know, I love scary stuff, but I just cannot get into that series. I don't know why. I feel like maybe if I sat down and really try to get into it, I could, but I can't. I don't know why.
Yeah, I watched the first few seasons. I stopped it after the Freak Show, I think it was. I think that's when I stopped watching.
I stopped after Apocalypse because I didn't like the new one about, I think it's 1984 or something. And I didn't like that it didn't have Evan Peters in it because I love Evan Peters.
Yeah, old Emma Roberts treated him dirty, right?
Yeah.
She like beat him and everything else in their very disturbed relationship.
Yeah, I heard about that. Like it was really bad and I didn't even know he went through all that. But after I seen something on it, but I haven't seen much on it after that, I don't think.
So I feel like we've come to a pretty satisfactory end to our discussion of Dracula. If you've got the Norton edition, there's tons of good stuff in the back. Of course, most of you got everyone but Addison's doing audiobook. There's tons of good articles in the back about Dracula. So even if you want to sort of see what some scholars are writing, in addition to some of the stuff I've posted on Brightspace, like even if you get, I would encourage you guys to download all those articles. And maybe at some point, if you're bored, you can start reading through them. And that's how you really get a good understanding of a text, by reading what all the scholars have come up with over the years. So if there's nothing further, we can end the Zoom a little early today. Next week, we will have one more. We'll sort of, like, there's just no reading next week, but we'll all, how about next week we just all come together, check in. You guys who are doing the audiobook, tell me how you're doing. You guys who are doing the paper option, you can ask me questions about that. We'll just have a nice sort of end cap session next week where I sort of answer anything that needs to be answered. Okay. And Addison, for you, I will be posting details about the actual writing of the final paper soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more worried right now that you get the bibliography done. But yeah, I'll get details up on that in the next day or two. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. If you want to talk to me anytime today, like I said, I'll be on SS Connect.
Alrighty.